Did you not feel confident before?
No, I was never confident public speaking. I was always confident kind of talking about compliance or dealing with regulators or other kind of business stakeholders. But when it came to public speaking, I've always been quite nervous and quite shy.
Really? But you were a criminal lawyer.
I know. It's interesting.
Mashallah, wow, you really can't tell. You can't tell
Yeah.
at all. Throughout the career, what was the highlight?
Quite a few.
Okay. Can you name one?
Okay, name one. Oh, there's so many. I can't name one.
In today's episode, I'm joined by Alia Mahmud, Global Reg Lead Affairs Expert at Comply Advantage. Alia's worked for some of the UK's best and biggest fintechs, from Oaknorth to Revolut, and she shared with us her journey about how she developed a passion for seeing justice done and how working in fintech compliance or compliance in general can be the best way to tackle crime on a global scale. This is an amazing episode for anyone who's interested in working for or setting up their own fintech, as well as seeing how compliance can actually be a business driver as opposed to a blocker, as many people seem to think. As always, I'm your host, Areeb Siddiqui, and welcome to Muslim Money Talk. So thank you so much for basically doing 2 podcasts today.
You're welcome.
But how are you? Are you still doing okay?
Alhamdulillah.
Okay, alhamdulillah. So I think when I was looking through your career, Alia, it seems like, mashallah, you've already had such an incredible ride, starting off in big banking with brands like Lloyds and HSBC, and then moving to amazing UK names like Revolut and Oaknorth. But did you always know you wanted to be in compliance? Like when you were a kid, was that always the plan?
No, that was never the plan. I always thought I'd be a doctor because that is what my parents really wanted for me. And of course, I wanted to make them proud. But I never had passion for medicine. I attempted it for 1 year. I went to medical school in Pakistan, and it wasn't for me. And I realized that I needed to do something that I enjoyed doing, but also that I had the aptitude for. And law was something that came very naturally to me in terms of grasping being difficult concepts and then, being able to speak about them in a very kind of simple way to have people understand the analytical thinking, the logical thinking behind it. And also I think inherently, I was kind of just born with a skill set of being good at law. My great-grandfather was the first Muslim Supreme Court judge in India, pre-partition. My uncles, my cousins, they've all gone into the legal route. They're judges in Pakistan or retired judges. And my mom herself, who's a doctor, wanted to be a lawyer. And so she was very supportive of me not wanting to go down the medical route, the traditional route.
Was your mom trying to live vicariously through you?
I think she has been living vicariously. She's been my number one cheerleader.
Mashallah, amazing. And at what point, because that's a big decision for you to be 1 year into this degree, what was it that basically cemented the idea that I'm not going to be a doctor? I'm going to turn this around, quit, go and apply to a different university for law instead. Was there something that triggered that, or was it just a feeling building up over time?
I just knew that if I wasn't passionate about it, I wouldn't be the best at it. And whatever I do, I want to be the best at, and I want to have the skills that will help me be the best at it. I just knew the medical field wasn't it for me.
Okay, so you were in Pakistan at the time. Was your family there as well?
Yes.
Okay, but then you ended up going to the UK, to London School of Economics to do law.
Yes.
What? So how was that?
Well, at the point when I left medical school, my dad was just like, what are you going to do? It was almost like, if you're not going to be a doctor, are you just going to stay at home? Which is just, you cannot just not study. I come from a family of high achievers. So, it's just generational education. To be educated, to go to top universities was nothing new. So to not do that was unheard of, I knew that I wanted to move back to the UK because to do law, Pakistan wasn't the place to do it. Even to be successful in Pakistan, you need to be foreign qualified. And so a lot of people will come abroad for their degree.
It's very male-dominated in Pakistan as well.
It is, which is why my granddad kind of told my mom not to do law and to do medicine. And I've got 5 aunts.
Wow.
They're all doctors.
Wow,
so,
mashallah.
Mashallah.
Okay.
And these were ladies born in the late 40s, early 50s. So even as a female, it was, you need to be educated. You need to be a professional. You need to be independent. the degree at LSE really appealed to me because it was a combined law degree and a management degree.
Okay.
So I wanted to keep my options open. I still wasn't sure whether law was the route for me or whether it was like kind of business management and I wanted to go down that side of things. And that degree gave me the flexibility of being able to do both.
Okay. And was coming to the UK, you'd spent a lot of your childhood here
Yes.
already, so it wasn't like a culture shock or
No.
anything. Okay.
Pakistan was a culture shock.
Okay. How's it? Because did you speak the language? Did you know
I
Urdu?
learned that I knew basic Urdu, as you know, you would know as well, kind of growing up in the UK. And it was only when I moved to Pakistan when everything was being taught in Urdu, even though it was like, you know,
All the lectures were in Urdu.
all the lectures were in Urdu, although it was, you know, English syllabus. I had to give an exam, an Urdu exam as well, in A levels. So just learning how to read, write. And I always give credit to my mom because even living in the UK, she made sure that we could read Urdu and speak it fluently. She loves Urdu.
Actually, because your Urdu is amazing.
Thank
right?
you.
I think to the point where we were talking recently that you wanted to launch an Urdu podcast.
Yes, I wanted to do an Urdu podcast.
Yeah.
I was like, people are tired of speaking English.
I'd really need to brush up on my Urdu. I can understand everything
Yeah.
100%. If you want to do this in Urdu, go for it. I will just like translate it at the bottom, but I will respond in English, I'm afraid. Okay, so you came back, did that, and then you went into criminal law.
Yes.
Wow. So was that something you were really passionate about then?
I was, yeah. Criminal justice in general was a big thing for me. I always found myself advocating for people. Part of my childhood, we grew up in the Middle East. I spent 4 years there, and we had a Filipino nanny. And I remember she would be telling me how, you know, she doesn't have her passport. As an employer in the Middle East, you have to give your passport to the employer.
I've always found that so strange.
So strange. And I would find that so strange. And even kind of like visiting my relatives in Pakistan, just seeing how the labor class were treated, seeing how people in general are just treated unfairly. I was always very open about advocating and trying to look out for people. And I think just naturally the criminal law appealed to me.
It's so strange when you are of Pakistani background and you grow up here and then you go and, you know, spend your summers in Pakistan and you see that dichotomy between the different classes of people almost directly from colonial times. It just hasn't left. It's a very, very strange shock to the system to see how pervasive it is still in Pakistan and in most countries in the world, to be honest. So I can definitely see why that would have inspired you. But you were in criminal law, but then you found yourself working as a risk analyst in Lloyd's. So what caused that to happen?
So I once I decided that kind of the traditional criminal law practice wasn't for me, I wanted to join a financial services company because for me, I would think, okay, well, all of these criminal activities are generating illicit money. That illicit money is going to be flowing through financial institutions. They're kind of the gateway. And the best way to kind of do really kind of neat and exciting criminal investigations would be to kind of look at transactions and identify suspicious behavior. And the only way I could really do it is starting off in risk and as a risk analyst. It was actually a fraud analyst role at Lloyd's. And it was not easy to even get into banking, even though I had my bachelor's in law. I had done the legal practice course because I was qualifying to be a solicitor. I had started my master's degree in financial regulation and compliance. I was so overqualified, but people were still like, where's your banking experience? You never worked in a bank. So it wasn't
You weren't
easy.
coming in as a graduate?
I did not want to do the graduate
Wow,
route.
okay.
Yeah, I didn't.
Good
go
for
the
you. So
traditional
you
route.
missed the whole, you know, massive competition of all these grad schemes. You just went in straight
I
as
went in
an experienced hire.
As an experience, exactly.
Okay.
And Lloyd's opened the door to HSBC. So if I hadn't done Lloyd's, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to join HSBC. And I loved the culture of HSBC. When I joined, they were going through a rigorous process of, you know, setting global standards. It was after the Mexican drug cartel fine that they had of $9 billion, a deferred prosecution agreement.
So that's where HSBC purchased a bank in Mexico that happened to have been used by the cartel, and basically HSBC was found to not have done the right due diligence on where the source of funds.
Yeah, just not having effective processes or policies and minimal oversight on the business operations out in Mexico.
So that really shook up the whole bank, I guess.
It completely shook up the whole bank. With the deferred prosecution agreements, oftentimes they'll place an individual either from the regulator or any other kind of law legal body to kind of monitor the business. So at HSBC, there was we had quite a few monitors, they were called. So everything that was being done was being checked and overseen by the regulator. So everyone was just really committed to compliance, to having a good compliance culture. And that's the best time, I think, for me when I did join, because I was exposed to all of the higher standards and the right way of doing things.
So you fell out of love with criminal law and you thought, let me start dealing with white collar crime. And basically all crime, it all has to go through the financial system anyway.
Yeah.
Let's do that. But still this idea of wanting to deal with justice and ensure that that's being delivered, that seems like a through line throughout your career in this way.
It is, yeah.
Okay, wow. So HSBC, you were doing really well there. And then you made a jump to a big foreign bank, Qatar National Bank. And as I understand, that was here in the UK.
Yes.
Okay, wow. So, and there you were doing more of was it MLRO?
Yes.
Type role?
Yes.
So money laundering.
Money laundering reporting officer.
Okay.
And Qatar National Bank is what you'd call a foreign bank. They have a very different risk profile than kind of a traditional high street bank, because predominantly the customers are non-residents, ultra high net worth individuals, politically exposed people. I really needed to move out of the comfort zone that HSBC provided me into a more senior role where I had more responsibilities on oversight, but also dealing directly with the regulator. I'm really grateful that time that I spent at Qatar National Bank gave me that exposure of dealing with the regulator, providing them regular updates, being able to explain how certain processes have been put in place, why certain customers were onboarded, being able to defend decisions that were being taken by a business.
Defend them to the regulator?
Yes.
So you can challenge the regulator directly? Yes. Okay, wow. As a fintech, that seems really foreign. But it's like a no-go. You just got to keep the regulator happy. But you had the confidence and I guess the backing from the bank to actually go and start challenging decisions?
Well, I think there are two parts. Qatar National Bank at that time was under a Section 166. It's called a Voluntary Requirement Enforcement Action, which essentially means that they need to kind of get things in order when it comes to their compliance and risk processes.
So the FCA issues this thing, Section 166. Yes. That means there's a forced investigation on the company that some big four like Deloitte or PwC usually comes in and starts performing a task. Okay.
Yes, exactly. And during those types of engagements, and parts of your business can be restricted. So you might have a restriction on the types of products you're providing, a jurisdiction restriction, or even the number of customers. So maybe even there could be a restriction around onboarding new customers. So essentially when you're in that dichotomy with the regulator, if customers are being onboarded, you need to be able to explain to the regulator why and how you have assessed the risk and how you're going to manage that risk, and really be able to then justify your actions. So it wasn't so much challenging, but more justifying business decisions and assuring the regulator that there were the right controls in place.
Okay. Thank you for listening to Muslim Money Talk. If you like what you've heard so far, you might be interested in checking out what we do at Kestrl, the Muslim Money app. Kestrl is a service that helps Muslims who want to grow their wealth without having to compromise, whether it's on their belief or user experience or price. I founded Kestrl because of how fed up I was at how poor Islamic financial services were in this country. Often people didn't use them because of how bad the user experience or customer service, and indeed how high on price they were. So Kestrl was the answer to that. If you download the Kestrl app today, it can help you by creating a budgeting plan. Plug in whatever bank account you have and it will create an auto budget just for you. You can then tell us what goals you're saving for and we'll save towards them automatically into pots, and then crucially link you towards Sharia compliant investment and savings products as well. So download Kestrl today and try it out for yourself. Now back to the podcast. Okay. And Qatar National Bank, obviously linked to Qatar. Was there any Islamic finance involved in that?
Not in the role I did, unfortunately. I did think I'd get some exposure to traditional Islamic finance. I mean, they do have an Islamic finance arm. They do marhaba and all the kind of traditional sukuk products, but it's a very niche business line.
Okay. Because I think a lot of us, certainly in my career, I started at Deloitte and then went to PwC. There was this sense building up in me that I was working with a lot of banks as clients and wealth managers, helping them to design products and features that I myself and my community could never benefit from because of how steeped in riba or interest that they were.
Yes.
Was that something that you were starting to become more aware of in your roles?
Especially in my role at Oak North. So after Qatar National Bank, I really wanted to move into the fintech side, the challenger bank space.
I imagine because that's how manual a lot of the processes are at
Exactly. That
banks.
is how manual a lot of the processes are that you tend, I mean, and that's the main reason I left foreign banks. I mean, now things might be different, but when I was there, it was
I don't think that
legacy processes, which just means I cannot manage my risk. So as a MLRO or a deputy MLRO where you have personal liability, there's no way I'm going to keep myself up at night because there's a lack of technology in the company I work for.
So you're personally on the line.
You're personally on the line. Yeah.
As that kind of function.
Exactly.
An MLRO function.
Exactly.
Okay.
And if you don't have the right technology, you cannot manage your risks. It just puts you yourself at risk as an individual in my eyes. So I moved to Oak North. Now, Oak North is predominantly in the lending side of things, lending to small, medium businesses.
Yeah.
All interest-based. I kind of wanted a stopgap to joining Revolut because I had started my Revolut application at the same time.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Wow.
So kind of like Revolut was the company I wanted to
Revolut
go
was
for.
the dream.
It was.
Okay.
It was like, okay, if I can get through this vigorous assessment, great. If not, okay, I've kind of got like Oak North going on for the time being. But the interest-based products wasn't sitting well with me. So alhamdulillah, when I did get the offer from Revolut, it was...
Okay.
Yeah, it was great.
Okay, so you were at Oak North for a bit, senior compliance manager, and then jumped over to Revolut.
Yeah.
Arguably the most exciting challenger bank in the UK today. What on earth was that like?
It was fantastic.
What was the assessment process like?
So the assessment process I loved. It actually made me want to join the company more.
Wow.
In a weird way. They have analytical tasks, coding tasks that you have to do, even if you're in compliance. You know, kind of
had
theoretical.
you ever done coding?
I had never done coding. Nor had I ever done like the analytical task that they assigned. It wasn't something that I'd have people do that for me as opposed to me kind of do it myself.
So talk me through those tasks. An analytical task. What does that mean?
There was an analytical task, which was literally a spreadsheet of a data dump.
Oh, I see.
Different types of data, and by looking at that data, it was actually quite a neat case study. It was data from customer onboarding, document verification.
Okay.
So if a document failed, these would be the kind of reasons why a document failed. It could be because the image was blurry. It could be because it was a fraudulent document, etc. And you had to just kind of look at all this data and work out, okay, what is the main problem for why customer onboarding is so slow? And how can you fix it? So it's quite,
Okay. Wow. And then the coding task? So did you have to teach yourself coding before?
I mean, I did have to teach myself coding before. And also when you kind of join Revolut, I think people who don't have that coding experience, they have courses internally. They educate people. So I think for any compliance professional going into fintech, you should know coding anyways.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. So then you were at Revolut, and what were your main tasks there? So
in Revolut, I was in the regulatory compliance team. So the work involved reporting to the regulator and the kind of regular reports that need to be submitted, approving products, the kind of product governance process whenever the business wanted to launch a new product or enter a new jurisdiction. We had to do a vigorous risk assessment of that and then identify whether existing controls were sufficient. If not, what were the new controls? What was the new tech? Any third parties that we would need to work with. I was also leading their whistleblowing programs. So again, when employees feel that something's happening illegally, they need to have a safe channel, anonymous channel to report their concerns. And the bribery and corruption side, so people loved me when I had to get them to declare the gifts and entertainment that was being received. And the third-party risk management side was all around kind of due diligence on the third parties we were working with.
Okay, and did such a fast-moving fintech like Revolut, did they really appreciate the compliance function? Because I think in the banks that I've worked in my consulting days, and arguably now as running a fintech, compliance is often relegated to like a back of mind, like, oh, we have to do it, but it's kind of boring and it's more just a drain on the company. Did Revolut kind of get the importance of it?
They certainly did when I joined 4 years in. So They were it was around 4 years old, the company at that time, and compliance was bit high up on the agenda.
Wow.
And they were building out the teams. And I think compliance at Revolut was never really seen as a blocker. It was more just ensuring there were enough compliance people to keep up with the innovation, because the business were moving at lightning speed.
What kind of products were being launched when you were there? Was it the FX stuff?
So the crypto was newly being launched. When it was first launched, it didn't allow withdrawals. So you could invest in crypto, but you couldn't withdraw it as crypto. It would convert back into fiat, and then you'd kind of withdraw it that way. Obviously now it's full suite crypto product. So the investment side of the business, the trading, the crypto, and the savings products were coming out during the time that I was there. And then also launching into all the new jurisdictions across Europe and other countries as well.
Wow.
So those regulatory licenses were in play.
And is that where, because I know you're very bullish on crypto as an alternative to fiat currencies, is that where you kind of fell in love with it?
I think I'm not in love with crypto.
Sorry.
I found it exciting in the beginning because,
Yeah.
It was just this new digital asset.
Yeah.
I'm not thrilled about crypto because of the environmental damage kind of the major cryptocurrencies have, like Bitcoin. I think we often forget the amount of energy consumption that's needed, the carbon footprint, the water footprint it has, and it's very volatile. So for me, if you think of saving or investing in crypto, it's like gambling. The risk.
Have I got this completely wrong? For some reason, I thought you were really into crypto when we did our event at Barclays Rise. You said something along those lines, didn't you?
I'm a fan of the blockchain technology.
Oh, blockchain, okay.
And digital ledger technology.
The underlying technology,
in terms of using that for smarter contracts.
Got it.
I also am a firm believer in the use of crypto for tokenization of real-world assets.
Yes.
So the concept of someone just coming out with a token or a coin which is not backed by any physical real-world asset concerns me.
Yeah.
It opens doors to a lot of Ponzi schemes. I mean, look at FTX.
Yeah.
Yeah, embezzlement can happen quite easily.
But backing it with a real-world asset is the fundamentals of Islamic finance.
Yes,
so,
it is.
Okay, very cool. Wow. So it seemed like you had an amazing time at Revolut. What made you leave?
I left Revolut for personal reasons whereby I felt I wasn't able to effectively balance my work and my personal responsibilities. And I think when you join a company like Revolut or any fintech, it's always an exciting atmosphere. Like the energy is just electrifying and you enjoy your work. If obviously you enjoy it, you're passionate about it. And oftentimes, especially when you're remote working, I would see myself working into the late hours. I was working very long weeks and even into the weekend. And a point came where, as my parents, I'm the youngest and my parents are quite elderly. So my mom was quite ill during kind of my final few months at Revolut. She was admitted in the hospital. I had to have kind of a lot of procedures. And I remember this one time I was, staying in the hospital late with her, but I was working. And there was, a call I had to prepare for. And, it was going to be evening time in the UK. And she was lying down and she was asking me for something. And I remember saying, okay, Mom, I just need to, send this email. Give me a second. And from what I thought was 10 minutes was actually an hour. And I look and she's just fallen asleep. And I think she wanted water as well. I just remember her saying, can you get me water? And I was like, okay, Mom, 10 minutes. And I just, that guilt, like I just remember crying because I felt like, yes, this is my job and I'm passionate about it. But at the end of the day, these are my parents and my main responsibility is to serve them.
Wow.
And I wasn't able to keep that balance in a place like Revolut.
So you thought you had to find somewhere else?
I had to find a place where there would be balance.
And that's where you found algebra?
Yeah.
Okay.
Smaller startup, just getting started.
Okay, so you came in on the ground floor of this startup and your primary goal there was to help them get their own electronic money license.
Yeah.
Which I think you guys did in record time.
Yeah, much.
Right, because usually I think it takes around 2 years and you did it in less than 12 months,
Yeah.
am I right?
Yeah.
Okay. So how did you do that? Was that your experience dealing with the regulator before coming into play here?
A lot of it was because the founding team, the founders had already put in the building blocks
Okay.
in terms of knowing exactly what their business model would be, knowing exactly the type of customers they wanted to serve, having a business plan kind of draft already having been sent to the regulator. And they had a huge focus on risk and compliance. And I mean, just them hiring me is testament to that. As a startup, you don't spend so much on your compliance team unless you're taking it seriously. And they hired, a whole team. They were spending in terms of the tech side of things, helping me build out the entire kind of end-to-end program. And then, of course, my experience with dealing with the regulator helped. So I think it was a combination of everyone just doing the best at what they were supposed to do.
Because I think there's still this idea in a lot of front-facing roles, and even a lot of C-suite players hold this idea that compliance is just something that you got to do, and it's not a profit center at all for the business. But from what you've just described, if you're reducing false positives significantly, you're ultimately saving time and money, and
Exactly.
basically getting more profit for the business.
Yeah.
Do you think that idea is starting to permeate through different financial services firms, or do you still face a lot of questioning, or why do we have to do this?
No, I think that message is permeating, because I think once you've used good technology, you don't go back. So I think a lot of firms are understanding that their ability to manage risk means that they can grow their business, they can expand, they can use revenue on other areas rather than hiring more people to go through a whole bunch of false positive alerts, for example. And I think businesses are also seeing how they can bank higher risk customers that ordinarily they might not have banked previously.
Wow. Okay. So on paper, on your LinkedIn, you have had, mashallah, an incredible career. You've achieved more than most people will ever in their career. And you're still so young, mashallah. But what's next for you? Do you want to ever venture into entrepreneurship, do your own thing?
No, I enjoy working for a company.
That's fair enough. Yeah.
I wouldn't branch off into entrepreneurship. I definitely would focus more on the voluntary work I do, which currently, I can only do twice a week after my work hours.
What do you do?
So I work with the Maggie Oliver Foundation.
Okay.
It's a charity that predominantly supports victims of child and adult sexual abuse
Wow.
and exploitation, but mainly individuals who have been failed by the police or social services. So people who really do need an advocacy behind them, whether that's legal advocacy or emotional support and trauma therapy, which is what I do. I think maybe going forward in my career, I'd continue with the thought leadership side of things. Do sit on panels. I sound very credible. I have confidence.
You do?
In.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You sat on our panel as well.
Yes, I did.
So, but did you not feel confident before?
No, I was never confident public speaking. I was always confident kind of talking about compliance or dealing with regulators or other kind of business stakeholders. But when it came to public speaking, I've always been quite nervous and quite shy.
Really? But you were a criminal lawyer.
I know. It's interesting.
Mashallah, wow, you really can't tell. You can't tell
Yeah.
at all. Throughout the career, what was the highlight? What was the most, I suppose, most impressive thing you feel, the thing you were most proud of?
Quite a few.
Okay. Can you name one?
Okay, name one. Oh, there's so many. I can't name one. Well, Algebra's EMI was a huge achievement.
That's big. That's
that
very
was
big.
like, if I think about kind of recent. And then I think little projects I've worked on in the past have been huge achievements. Like it could be different things, like just being able to challenge the regulator on being able to do remittance businesses or being able to have high risk customers onboarded when they've said you can't onboard customers, and having them change their mind. Those little wins are also things I keep in mind.
On the other side, what have been some of the hardest moments in your career?
I think anyone in risk and compliance has a lot of tough moments, because it's like you said, sometimes you are thought of as the business blocker as opposed to a champion for the business and an enabler. And naturally, I think most risk and compliance professionals develop thick skin. You learn to kind of manage that pushback you get. The most challenging times in my career have been where, as a female, I haven't been given the same opportunities as my male counterparts. I think being an ethnic minority as well has meant that I've had to work twice as hard. And I don't say this for all of us. I'm just, speaking on behalf of myself. But it never really impacted me, because I remember growing up, my dad always said, "You look, Alia, you're not just brown, you're a female. And if you're going into law or kind of the business side of things, you are going to have to work twice as hard as any other counterpart of yours or your peers. You are going to have very strong work ethic, and you are just going to have to deliver more than others to be able to be seen and rewarded appropriately. And that is actually, which is funny enough, he explained this to me quite later on in my life. It was the reason why he wanted me to go into medicine, and why kind of the medical field appealed to parents for females, because you don't have that environment where you need to network with the opposite sex, where you need to be challenging people, where you need to, it's very different, I guess, when you're in the medical profession than, what I've gone into. So I always knew I'd have to work harder. But I think for me, the biggest challenges were actually Islamic finance. Is my recent biggest challenge of just trying to enter the space of Islamic finance as a female and talk about it, or do podcasts about it. I've reached out to people who other people have probably reached out to less qualified than me, and those people champion them as opposed to me. So I think my most recent disappointment is the exclusionary feelings I have had from Islamic finance and trying to tap into that.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
Here you are on a kind of Islamic finance podcast.
I am. I am on Muslim Money.
Muslim Money app. Well, okay. Well, that's a shame that that's still going on in Islamic finance.
Yeah.
But inshallah, that's going to come.
Inshallah, it'll change.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing all that with us, Alia. What I'd love to do is just say, if people wanted to reach out and ask any questions, get in contact, how can they do that?
LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn.
Okay, amazing. Oh, I almost forgot.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips for us at Kestrl as a fintech? Any traps we should be avoiding, or things which, other fintechs maybe aren't at the moment?
I think really kind of always keep risk and compliance as a focal point. I know Kestrl, you're not really into the transactional side of banking, but then when you do get into it, let's say, you will have so much data, not just from the open banking side of the business, but from a transactional side, that you could really do good by stopping illicit activities and illicit money flowing. And I just want to see more fintechs think of not just serving people's financial needs, but also just making the world better by really proactively identifying illicit funds flows, illicit actors, and reporting them.
Absolutely. Okay. Alia, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Muslim Money Talk podcast. If you like what you heard, then please subscribe to Muslim Money Talk wherever you might have been listening to this. Give us a like and share it with someone who you think might be interested. It really, really helps us out. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum, and see you next time.